So, does anyone have questions about the method, especially sitting meditation, or how to apply your method or methods of practice in daily life?
How about uh, discussion of the balance between personal and public practice?
How do you mean?
I mean, we all have a personal practice and we do things with other people as well. And we get into regular habits doing both. And um, I would like to hear your discussion of like the relative merits of private versus public practice, um, and how they work together.
When you say public practice, do you mean group practice, like people sitting
Yes,
together or in
yeah,
some sort of formal setting?
yes,
Yeah. Okay. So you just want to hear what I think in general of the merits of both?
yes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think it's a great topic, especially since some of us are in places that we're not close to centers, we're not close to group practice, or if it's a long journey to do group practice, or it's just expensive. Retreats are expensive. There are very few free retreats in the States here. And if it's not price, sometimes people feel that group practice on retreat is for some people, it can not only be uncomfortable, but just very problematic because of whatever condition they have. Maybe a health condition, a sleeping disorder, someone struggling with insomnia. If they have to all of a sudden go to retreat and follow a retreat schedule, that can be torturous, especially if the insomnia continues throughout the retreat. Um, it may not be beneficial at all for that person or for people who have certain medical, health, or even psychological issues that make retreat practice or group practice very difficult. So, yeah, what are the merits of both? Both have merits where, well, the group practice, because everyone's practicing together, it's usually easier to be more disciplined, right? Um, Especially if it's multiple periods of sitting or multiple days. So just think for those of you who have been on retreat, you know what it's like to have to wake up at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning when that's not your usual thing. And it's really difficult in the beginning. But because there are 20, 30 other people getting up at the same time, and maybe also because we paid money to attend the retreat, we want to attend the whole thing. So we drag ourselves out of bed at 4 in the morning and we get ourselves to the meditation hall. Um, that's a kind of discipline that we may not be able to do by ourselves at home, some of us. And it's not that just waking up at 4 in the morning is good inherently somehow, but if we can wake up at a certain hour when we've actually slept enough and make use of the whole day to do our sitting, to do our walking, to do all of these formal practices. Following this regimen or following a routine is excellent for the practice because we're making the most of the time. So whether it's waking up in the morning or sitting when we've decided to sit, it's so much easier to be disciplined or to be diligent when we're in a group, right? So that's one major merit or benefit of group practice. The fact that everyone around us is trying to train themselves. Almost, everyone, hopefully everyone there is trying to train themselves to have a stable mind and to work through obstacles, to work through laziness, or to work through overzealousness, pushing themselves too much. So group practice and this um, training, it's like we're training each other by practicing with each other. We're encouraging each other. And there's a kind of energy from that, an inspiration when we walk in the meditation hall and maybe we don't really feel like sitting, but we look into the hall, we make a bow and we look up and we happen to see someone, sitting upright, looking very calm and stable. It's inspiring, right? It can make us want to sit and say, okay, it's not that bad. My legs don't hurt that bad. Or the last sitting wasn't the greatest. It's fine. It's over. I'm going to go sit again. Try again. So there's this, mutual inspiration. It's like when we talked about a couple sessions ago, this interconnectedness or interrelatedness of what the Avatamsaka Sutra talks about, how we're all reflected in each other's minds. Basically, we're all influencing each other. Group practice, we're hopefully influencing each other in a positive way, in that our behavior, the retreat schedule, the retreat environment, what we hear, the Dharma teachings that we hear on retreat, all of it is this nutrition. Everywhere we go, everywhere we look reminds us of practice. And and before every activity, there's some sort of procedure or ritual to help us develop mindfulness or to help us develop our awareness. Even before a meal on retreat, even though we were just sitting in meditation for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, when we go and we walk to the dining hall, maybe we're a little scattered again, a little bit mentally scattered because maybe we saw something that triggered some train of thought and we got lost in it. But when we get to the dining hall, there's a chime that reminds us to bow. And then there's a meal recitation. So we're all reciting together again. So apart from just meditating together, um, there are all of these consistent reminders throughout the whole retreat or throughout the group practice to bring us back to our method. In daily life, we just don't have that. In daily life at home, especially if we're with people who are not into this practice, or not studying the Dharma, they're not training themselves, whether it's family or just our roommates. Um, when we're doing practice on our own and the people that we live with don't share the practice, it can be very challenging, especially if we haven't yet developed a more stable practice, which I'm sure we've all experienced. We get up from our meditation cushion, we see, our family member, they're doing this or that, or they approach us with something, and immediately we get triggered or we get stirred, and a lot of the times we forget the method, even if we really, really want to practice. When we practice alone, it's so easy to be forgetful outside of this retreat environment or outside of the group practice. And that's why in the monastery in Taiwan, when I was at Dharma Drum in Taiwan, even though it's a monastery where everyone is a monastic, they're there because they want to live the practice. There were still reminders posted on the walls, or even in the bathroom where you washed your hands, there was a reminder posted above the faucet, and it said something like, "Washing my hands, may they be." What did it say? Something like, "Washing my hands free of dirt. May my mind be pure and free of impurities, of vexations, for the sake of all sentient beings." There were these little reminders that were taken from, I believe it's another section in the Avatamsaka Sutra, reminders of everything that we do is a way for us to train ourselves, to free ourselves, and to free everyone, help everyone have a, a mind free of suffering and to experience their innate purity. We talked about the last session. So at home, if we practice alone, we could benefit from more reminders, physical things, objects in our environment that remind us to practice, whether it's verbal, you know, a few phrases, um, or using our phone as a routine chime that just goes off and reminds us to come back to our method. Um, or the images of the Buddha or images of practitioners. So when we turn and we look, we see an image, and hopefully it reminds us to come back to the method. I see some of you have like an altar. That's one major function of an altar, to create a physical space so that we can avoid being reminded by the practice. Some people are concerned about having an altar in certain places in the house. You know, should I have a Buddha statue in my bedroom? It just kind of doesn't feel right. Or should I have this statue over here? Does it have to be a certain height? You know, it doesn't really matter. The statue won't get offended by anything. And if you feel it will, if you feel it's not right to have it in the bedroom, you can put a little cover over the statue when it needs to be covered. Um, Otherwise, having these statues, having these images, it's wonderful reminders of the practice and for us to return to the method. I think there's also a merit to personal practice, which you can't find on retreat, which is flexibility. So on retreat, again, if we're struggling with some medical condition, if we have insomnia, for example, on retreat, we'd probably feel bad if we just slept in, or if we have to constantly give notes to this person and that person and say, "Oh, I couldn't sleep again last night. Can I rest longer?" That can be an inconvenience, and it can just, if the insomnia is so bad, we're not going to improve it during the retreat. It could be more beneficial just to follow our own schedule at home, to sleep well, sleep as long as we need to sleep, and then when we feel good, we can sit, rather than trying to struggle and suffer through insomnia and all the pain and suffering that comes if we don't sleep well and we're trying to stay awake during the retreat. You know, even during Dharma talks, if we're passing out during the Dharma talk because it was so hard to sleep, we're not even benefiting from hearing the Dharma. So it can be beneficial to practice alone and adjust and adapt or adjust the routine to suit our needs. And for folks who like to sit longer, another thing is that on retreat, sometimes they make you get up after 40 minutes. And it may feel like, well, I just sat down. I want to sit longer. Um, on retreat, there can be a lot of movement and activity, which can be a bit of a disturbance for people who can sit much longer, who can sit for an hour or 2 hours. So for some people, at some point in their practice, a retreat with people can be more disturbing, where a retreat by themselves, Because by this point, if a retreat feels like a disturbance, they probably have enough discipline to follow their own routine and to sit for very long. Sit for a long time, maybe walk for a long time, and have much more consistent application of the method. So, that can be very beneficial. And that's why people do a solitary retreat, right? So there are merits of both, solitary practice, group practice, and it's important to know what we need. Most of us could benefit from group practice. Some of us, because it's really too challenging for our situation, we can practice alone and do okay. But I would say for people who struggle with either medical issues or insomnia, that you can do shorter retreats first until you can get more comfortable with them and hopefully sleep better, and maybe even learn how to deal with the insomnia on retreat, um, or learn how to adapt with your medical issue on retreat. Start with shorter, more doable lengths of retreat and gradually build. And for those of you who have done retreats for many years, and maybe you've never done a solitary retreat, you can try it. But create a schedule. Make it a bit more disciplined than just daily life. Because if there's too little discipline and too little structure, even someone with more experience can be, a bit lazy, sleep much longer than they need to sleep, eat much more than they need to eat, um, stop the sitting when they could have sat longer. So if you do solitary retreat, create a structure that could be a bit challenging, but that also allows you to adapt to your needs, and get deeper into the method with longer sittings or even longer periods of walking or even longer periods of work practice. Just the last point for myself, um, I benefited a lot from work practice, as I mentioned last time, doing chores, doing cleaning, doing a kind of work that you can get into more than just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but a consistent work practice, chopping wood if you're in the woods, or doing a deep cleaning of your home and really seeing it as a chance to just immerse yourself in the activity. Not just, yeah, yeah, I'll practice, for 15 minutes, I'll just get this done and get it out of the way so I can sit again, but just to immerse ourselves in the activity. Work practice can be a great way to train the mind, a great way to also wear away at our tendency to not like to do certain things, especially if you don't like to clean. Doing work practice can help us face that aversion and drop it. I forget which Chan master it was, but he was experiencing some obstructions in his practice, some difficulties. This was, this is in ancient times, at a monastery. He was a monk, and his teacher said, "Go clean the toilet. Maybe that can help you." And the monk thought, "I mean, clean the toilet. How is that going to help me with my obstructions?" The teacher said, "Just go do it." And the monk cleaned the toilet. And this is not, when we say the word toilet here in the States, we think of like these white porcelain shiny bowls, right? It's not that kind of toilet back then. Back then, cleaning the toilet meant you actually had to go underneath the place where everyone sits, which was usually just a room with a wooden platform or maybe a stone base where you sat and you did your business into a hole. But underneath that hole was like a cavern or a little cave. It's basically like the ancient septic tank. So to clean the toilet, the monk had to go into the septic room to shovel it out. And not only shovel it out, to scrape the walls down. Because some of the stuff sticks to the walls. And you can't just let it stick there and harden into stone. So they would, shave off the walls or use a tool to pick and scrape off the walls. So that was a messy job, as you can imagine. Um, but after doing it, he had some certain breakthroughs. After single-mindedly just going into this septic tank or this septic room to clean it, to clean the filth out, letting go of this aversion to the smell, to the feel, to the look of it, just doing it. That person had some breakthroughs. That was some benefits of both group practice and personal practice. So thanks for the question, Victor, so that I have something to talk about. I'm sure you know the benefits of all those. Does that stir up any questions or related things? Yeah. Hi,
Oh,
welcome back.
thanks. So I have a question regarding the tension above my around my shoulder because I know when I sit, sometimes it's very kind of stressful to relax my shoulder. I have a hard time to relax my shoulder. And then when I go retreat, it's much worse. I was able to maybe relax my shoulder at home easily compared when I go to a retreat. Every time I go to a retreat, I told myself, I know I need to relax my shoulder. I know just relax it. Just relax. It should be simple, but it's not as simple for me. I can relax my leg. No, not an issue. My leg don't usually hurt. My head is fine, but my shoulder, I don't know, it's kind of like just like a thousand heavy rock on my shoulder. Every time I should not say I try to relax, but I just couldn't feel relaxed. So do you have any tip to to do this? Maybe some sort of a product more at home can help me when I go retreat more relaxed.
Yeah,
And
that's it. Yeah, that's a great question. Um, when you say relax the shoulder, is it just one shoulder as well?
no, both
What's
shoulder.
both?
Yes. Every time I
Okay.
say relax, if I go out a little bit more, and I say relax, if I go out, erase out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think it's important to know what the cause of the shoulder issue is, because it could be a couple of things. One thing could just be that it's tension coming from psychological tension or psychological a source. So, if some people find when they go to retreat, they get especially anxious because they have a lot of expectation because they know that, wow, I'm finally on retreat. This is like the only chance of a whole year I get to have here. I gotta practice well. I gotta do my best. I can't waste my time here. I can't ruin this opportunity. And the more they have these expectations, the tighter and more tense they get. So it could be that. It could also be tension or tightness from chronic use. So for people who either work at a desk or, I know some people who they're dentists or they have some sort of using certain machines and they have to lean over like this. People who have certain jobs that require a certain posture, they can develop chronic tension in certain parts of the body. And that kind of chronic tension is not something you can just relax away. A lot of times you may need to do certain movements or stretching, and not only stretching, but actually strengthening. A lot of people have muscle pain, body aches because the body's weak. So actually muscle strengthening, strength training can reduce a lot of what we feel as tension and tightness and pain. That's not just because we need to relax, but we actually need to use our muscles more. So I think it's hard to say what we need to do unless we know what the cause is. So that's something we can experiment with. So if you do have shoulder pain and shoulder tension, um, to observe, do you have a lot of expectation? Is it the more expectation, the more tension? Well, then that's a clearer cause and effect. Um, could it be chronic tension that there's not so much expectation about something, but maybe we often hold our shoulders up, either when we work or we talk, and when we walk, we may just have this tight posture. And then when we start to relax, like on retreat, it becomes noticeable. We never noticed how tight we were or how tense we were on retreat because we're much more aware of ourselves. We notice it. So it seems like it may be getting worse, but it's actually just the way it always is, but we need to just need to relax it. So just relaxing again and again can be something we need to do to eventually release these chronic tensions. But one important point with that is when we relax or practice relaxation, we don't just tell ourselves. If we're the if we have the approach of telling ourselves to relax, or telling ourselves to use the method, or telling ourselves to try harder, this intention or this thought of just relax, just relax already. Come on, just relax. That's actually like every time we do it, we're it's almost like we're, you know, whipping an ox or you know, trying to train some animal with a whip. The more we hit them, the more agitated they get. Or pulling a dog's leash when we're trying to train it, the dog may get more agitated. The proper way to relax is actually just to be aware of the tension. And it's not a verbal command. It's just be aware of the tension. What happens when we're aware of the tension? And you could experiment right now. Do you feel tension anywhere in the body? And if so, what happens if we just relax it? Like right now, I actually feel tension because I'm freezing in here. The heat doesn't really come upstairs. I have the wood stove on downstairs. It's nice and toasty. Upstairs, it's freezing. So I'm like shivering. I can also notice that the shivering can be released. I can release that tendency to want to shiver, um, or an aversion to the cold just by being aware of it. So that's the proper way to relax. It's through awareness of tension, we can just release it. We want to be really careful not to command ourselves to relax. And then, just as for chronic pain coming from weakness, when the muscles atrophy because they're not being used and they get weak, there may be a lot of pain with that. So I encourage everyone, if you're not physically active, to really work your body at least once or twice a week. And especially those muscles that give you pain, start to train them and see what happens. Even with different simple movements, you don't have to go buy expensive gear, but even doing shoulder movements, shoulder rotations, because as you do the rotations, you're using muscle to tense and raise them, and then you're using muscle to lower them and move them. And these big arm movements, you need to use muscle and tense muscle in order to move. And a lot of the times we don't use those muscles on a daily basis unless we're doing a lot of physical activity. So you could even try that. And if there's a certain sense of relief, even after 10 minutes of movement, that could be a sign that the body needs some training. So 3 points there. Um, the body may need training, the muscles may need training. We may have chronic tension that's just habitual, and we just need to practice relaxing through awareness, direct awareness of tension and releasing it. And then some tension comes from expectation, especially on retreat. So to be careful not to make such a big thing of it. Just go in like, oh, I'm just here to practice like every other day.
Thank you. This is very helpful.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you so much.
George?
Hi. Um, I've been practicing counting the breath for a while. I was wondering if it's beneficial and necessary to practice other method. For example, repeat Dharma's name or 参话头.
Okay. So is the question when to change methods, or is it important to change at some point? Okay. Yeah, how many other folks out there have been using one method for a while and you're just like, not sure if it's really doing anything for me, or if I need to change or progress? The best way is actually when the method itself changes because we're progressing with it. Meaning that after using a method for some time, the state of our body and mind changes, and usually the method will change with it. So, for example, if we're using counting the breath, if we're using it well, consistently, at some point we'll find that our mind is so concentrated, there's only the counting, there's no other distractions. And at some point, we may even find that the number just stops happening. Not because we got distracted. That's what usually happens. We count, and then all of a sudden, a train of thought pulls us away, or we count, and all of a sudden, we fall into a haze or a kind of blankness. So it's not that, but we count until actually the number may just stop happening. And we find ourselves just glued to the breath. Our attention is just there with the breath, moment to moment, effortlessly. There may be some random thoughts passing here and there, but we're actually just on the breath, as if we're like riding the breath at that point. In the beginning, we had to find the breath. Sometimes we couldn't find it. Later on, we had to, come back to it because we lost it, and then we don't even know what number we were on. Like we're grasping for the breath at that point, or we're trying to grab a hold of it, so to speak, to calm ourselves down. But if we count consistently, the body and mind are relaxed, at some point the number may just fall away and we're just riding on the breath, or our attention is just with the breath moment to moment. That's the best way. The method will change. And even further, if we're staying with the breath so consistently, in a way riding the breath, At some point, the breath may itself not be clear, or the breath itself may not feel like it's there, but our mind is completely stable. There's no scattered thinking or distractions. There's just a state of a kind of mental stillness. And it just happens when we stay with the breath long enough that that energy of concentration continues without any active need to pick up the method, right? So the method can change, or the method changes itself the more we progress with it. So from counting, we progress to just following the breath or being with the breath. After being with the breath can drop away and we're stable, we're still. And um, at that point, the method can also change to just noticing that we're sitting there, and it can change the silent illumination or huatou, right? The mind is still, but if we don't get fixated on that kind of inner stillness and we just notice we're sitting, then we're using silent illumination. But we're using it at a much deeper level than if we did just trying to start with it, right? So the method or our condition changes into silent illumination. Um, it just depends. It depends on the practitioner because some people would decide to use, um, after a period or multiple periods of stillness, they may decide to use a different method, right? A different kind of contemplation or something. But in our tradition, we just recommend that you stay with the method you've chosen until the method itself changes and evolves into something where you may need something new, right? So you could just end up after counting, following the breath, and then just being still. You end up aware of sitting, and that's silent illumination. But it could be that a person sitting, they start with counting the breath, they end up with a very still and calm state, but they seem to get stuck there, frequently stuck in this stillness, probably because it's very likable, it's very peaceful and enjoyable. And they end up getting to stillness frequently, but it doesn't go beyond that. That's when we could recommend that they use a huatou. The huatou method helps to break that fixation to stillness. Because it's not easy to let go of it because it's so nice. But picking up a huatou, you can't hold on to stillness anymore, right? If you're calm and still and peaceful and you bring up the thought, who is peaceful? Immediately it's like that stillness or that fixation on stillness is wiped away, let go of with that phrase, who is still, right? And in that way, it can develop into the use of huatou and developing this questioning. The questioning helps us to let go of any kind of state or fixation, whether it's fixation on passing thoughts or fixation on stillness. The huatou method helps to release all of it. Um, so is that clear? Whatever method you have, just stick with it. Keep going back to it. It may feel like nothing is happening, or it may feel like you're not making progress. If that's the case, you may need to work more on relaxation, actually. Work on the foundations, relaxation, relaxed attitude, in order to really be consistent with counting. If you're progressing with it, then you're clearly progressing and you know that you're getting calmer and calmer as you use it, which is great, but don't drop it prematurely. Don't sit and be like, oh wow, I feel concentrated. Let me drop the breath. You know, because that would be more of a craving. Or am I ready to drop the counting yet? Can I stop counting yet? I want to see what it's like if I stop counting. All those thoughts are a kind of craving to see if something will be different, something will be better. So if we have those kind of thoughts or that kind of tendency or curiosity when we're using our method, just drop it and really appreciate your method. Appreciate that it's a necessary tool to help us first release our distracted thinking and just let the method take its course. So was that helpful? Did that answer your question, George? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any follow-up to that?
I did wonder if I want to use huatou. Does that mean I just repeat the same questions again and again? So I need to pick a sentence first and then repeat that?
Yeah. Well, huatou is quite a unique method. I think we don't have time to get into it. And I actually recommend for those of you who really want to get into huatou practice or the method of critical phrase to do a retreat, do a huatou retreat. Or for those of you working with me directly, we can, work on it together. But it's very unique, very different than just like reciting a Buddha name or reciting a mantra. It's quite different than that. Okay, so great questions today. Okay, everyone. This is great to practice with you tonight. Hope the holidays are going well so far and enjoy the next couple weeks. I'll see you next year.
Thank
Okay,
you.
take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.